Um, Hi everyone. Welcome to the third day of the for Friends conference. I'm really excited for today's keynote by my friend Joel Korte. I've known Joel since 2008, I think.
Yep.
And we get to have the fun of doing this Hutter Talk BE team together. And I'm just so grateful that he's in my life. Joel is an electrical engineer and entrepreneur, as well as a person who stutters. He graduated from the University of Minnesota with the Masters of Arts in Speech-Language Pathology in 2013 and earned his Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of St. Thomas in 2007. Joel is the owner of the Chase Bliss Audio, a guitar effects pedal company, and he is a musician. Joel lives with his wife and two boys, Chase and Griffin, in St. Michael, Minnesota. Thank you so much, Joel, for being here. Before I pass it over to you, I just want to really quickly let everyone know that if you do have questions during the keynote or comments, we ask that you use the chat box. And then if we have time, Sarah or myself will address those to Joel. And if we run out of time, then we'll make sure that Joel gets those questions and we can pick it up at a later time, either on Slack or another Zoom call. All right, Joel.
Thank you, Karen. Now I'm trying to figure out while I do this speech if I want to look at everyone's faces or if that's going to make me too nervous. I guess the good thing is I don't know how to change it, so I'm just going to leave it. Thanks so much for the introduction, Karen. It's so good to see you and to see everyone. I saw a comment from Barry, I think it was this morning that, now I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was something about how after having an experience with people who stutter again, that he didn't know how much he needed it. And I'm feeling the same way right now. It's been too long since I've been around this many people who stutter, albeit virtually. And it's kind of hard to know if I would be more nervous if this was in person or it's hard to imagine I'd be more nervous than I am right now, but I'm also very, very excited. And before I get started here, I wanted to make sure to give a special thank you to friends and to Lee. I kind of feel like this is the biggest honor I've ever had in my life. I mean, I'll get into this with some of the stuff I want to talk about today, but gosh, if you would have told me, 10, 15, 20 years ago that I would be a keynote speaker at a conference for people who stutter, it wouldn't register. And I'm so appreciative of the work that Friends does, and just really an honor to be here speaking and to be involved. So thank you. So I've been going over what I wanted to say here today and worrying about it and thinking about it and trying to figure out how I'd best like to utilize this time. And I just thought back to all of the experiences that I've had on my stuttering journey. And I think just kind of speaking from the heart and talking about my experience and how I got to where I am today, because I think just like I said about even just doing this speech right now, how that was sort of inconceivable to me earlier in my life. Really, when I think about it, my life right now is sort of inconceivable to, for past Joel, we'll call him. And so, yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I do right now, and then kind of move backwards and time and talk about how this happened, I guess, or try to give some perspective on that. So right now, in 2020, I own a guitar effects pedal company called Chase Bliss Audio. And I have 5 full-time employees. I started the business in 2013. I have a beautiful, loving wife, Kelly, and 2 boys, Chase, who's 5 years old, and Griffin, who's 3 years old, who we affectionately call Moose, because he's just kind of a moose. That's just all there is to it. And some of the artists that I've gotten to connect with that use my guitar effects pedals. Oh, I should probably explain what guitar effects pedals are. I feel like usually the light bulb moment for people who aren't familiar with what guitar effects pedals are is an example of a guitar effects pedal would be a wah-wah pedal. That would be one kind of effect, and usually people know what that is. It's the craziest thing. Anyway, so I don't actually make a wah-wah pedal, but that's just an example of one of these things, these little electronic devices that musicians have on the floor in front of them when they perform or record or write songs, and they step on that electronic device, and sometimes referred to as a stomp box because of that, and it makes their guitar or keyboard or voice or other instrument sound interesting or sound more different, or anything that they want it to sound like it can. Some of the people that use our pedals are make sure I wrote some of these down because I didn't want to forget, but John Mayer, actually got to spend a little time with him last year, which was, that's crazy, right? John Mayer. The guitarists for Kendrick Lamar, Freaky Rob, Jason Isbell, Kings of Leon, Ed O'Brien of Radiohead, who I'm also somehow friends with, and Young Guru, which is Jay-Z's producer. Or there's more, but those are just like all those people. Oh, did I mention Kings of Leon? That was my list I wanted to say. Anyway, so it's wild, right? Like these are all really artists in the world that are, have had a lot of impact, and to be able to give them tools to be creative and have a relationship on some level with them is, again, going back 15, 20 years, it doesn't seem real. So how did this all happen? That's a good question. And that's going to kind of want to walk through and talk about some of the experiences that I've had with stuttering specifically, and what I've learned, and how I feel like it's helped shape me into the person that I am. So I don't want to spend too much time on little Joel, or young person Joel as I was growing up, because the way that I approached stuttering, and the way that I reacted to it was largely the same from when I first started stuttering when I was 5, roughly, to when I went to the American Institute for Stuttering and got what I would consider my first like really good therapy when I was 24 years old. And so the time between I was 5 and 24, which is, almost 20 years, the way that I tried to, I guess, manage my stuttering is just to try to hide it. I think a lot of us had that experience. And, there were some contexts where I was, quote unquote, successful in hiding it. And then there was a lot of times where it just wasn't, there was just no way that I could hide it. If I was sometimes talking on the phone, or if I had to give some kind of speech in class, I just remember worrying a lot, and I still worry, but I just remember always having that stuttering hanging over my head. And I know my parents are watching, and they always remind me that when I talk about being a kid who stutters, they remind me that I was a pretty happy little guy. But I do have to say that my memory of growing up with stuttering, it's hard to think of a time where I wasn't really thinking about it. I certainly thought about stuttering every day, and it felt like it was almost all the time. It felt like it shaped my decisions in some way for nearly everything. And so that resulted in a lot of challenges. So I'm sure that you're all aware. I was just scared a lot. And the one thing I'm sure of is that when I was growing up, it never entered my mind even that it would be an option to continue stuttering. It never seemed like that was just a crazy thought. It's like, I stutter, I have this problem, and there's people that can help me make it go away. And so I tried everything, and tried different kind of speech tools, and just tried with every fiber of my being not to be a person who stutters. And what I didn't know is that that's, for me, about the worst way to handle my stuttering is trying really hard not to make it happen, is about is a recipe for making it more difficult for me to communicate. But I went through that part of my life. But when I really hit what I would consider rock bottom with my stuttering, was this series of events when I was around 23, that really was a catalyst for me knowing that I needed to do something to change the way that I managed and approached my stuttering. So, I kind of got through college the same way I always got through everything, where it was just really trying to hide it. And a few months before I was going to graduate with my electrical engineering degree, and I was starting to interview for jobs, which was problematic to say the least. It was hard. I was able to find a job, but right around that time, it was February 2007. My brother, who was my best friend, he was living out in California, pursuing an acting career. He was killed by a drunk driver. And, that just radically changed everything about my life. This concept I want to keep coming back to, that I want to introduce now is, my brother was a big fan of this, I guess you would say, philosopher Joseph Campbell, who's known for the phrase "follow your bliss." And my brother was very much living his life in that way and following his bliss, and really just going for it, and I wasn't at all. I was just trying to, get a job and, kind of get through the day, I guess. Trying not to embarrass myself for what I thought was embarrassing. And, after my brother died, there's about a year after that where, everything was just sort of awful. And I, 4 or 5 months later, I did start that job. And one of the things I remember a lot about it, but one thing I'll never forget is just sitting in my cubicle and having the phone ring. And that would just like trigger this just extremely emotional response. So as soon as the phone rang and I knew I'd have to answer it, my heart would just be beating out of my chest, and I was just tight and stressed out. And it's like, regardless of if I stuttered or not, I didn't have a chance. Like I was so, by the time I picked up the phone and put it up to my ear, there was just nothing that could come out, because I was so scared and terrified to stutter. And it's just made those blocks so long. I don't know if there's a record for the longest block, but I feel like I could throw my hat into the ring. But this was a big part of how I was able to make changes and able to become less fearful of those situations. But anyway, this job, I didn't really like the job. I think mostly because I was so stressed out every day. And anytime, this was kind of like a thing with my life for as long as I can remember. Like, let's say at work, there was a meeting at 3 p.m. that I knew I would have to speak in. It's like, that's all I thought about. And I remember that when I was growing up as well, just having a thing that I knew I had to do, that I just couldn't live in the moment. I was always just worried about that. And so I was really struggling at my job. I was really grieving the loss of my brother. But at some point I realized I can't live like this. Like, I am so scared every day. There's no relief. I don't know what to do, but I just know that I can't go on like this. This is just no way for anybody to live. And I don't know what I can do. I kind of felt like, like a lot of us, I felt like I tried speech therapy and I failed. I tried to get fluent and I couldn't do it. Or there was something wrong with me where I couldn't figure out the strategies or the tools or whatever. But I was like, I have to give it another shot. I don't know what else I can do. I have to do something. So I went back to my old speech therapist that I'd had, and she had like really changed her perspective, and she was starting to introduce stuff to me that I hadn't really considered before. And it took me a long time to kind of wrap my head around, which, I'll get into here, but it was kind of for the first time, there's a little less emphasis on fluency. And this was new. I wasn't sure if I liked it at the time because I didn't want to stutter. And I wanted to figure out how to not stutter. And then when and so like what that, and then when I decided I wanted to do intensive therapy, I wanted to go somewhere and I wanted to really work on it and really really become fluent or something. And somehow, I don't know how it was recommended to me, but I went to the American Institute for Stuttering, and I feel like that was like the beginning of like a new awakening for me, or it was the first time that I even considered that stuttering could be okay. And I sometimes wonder, I'm like, how lucky I was to one of my good friends, Eric Jackson. This is when we met. He just happened to be an intern at the program that I was attending for speech therapy. And I had personally never seen someone, up until that point in my life, I'd never seen someone stutter. I mean, now I've seen lots of examples, but I've never seen someone. So Eric, don't get too too proud. No, I'm just kidding. I'd never seen someone be funny, charismatic, confident while stuttering. And there was, we had a lot of stuff in common. Eric played guitar, and remember one of the days we had therapy and Eric had a show. We all went to the show, and it was just like, it's like one of the best days of my life. It was hanging out with other people who stutter, feeling these new feelings all day, and like this, looking at my stuttering like in a slightly less negative way at the time. It was like planting those seeds for me, but just to have an example of someone that really stuttered, that was so cool, and that I wanted to emulate, and it was mind blowing. And I still think back, like all the different experiences that I had in my life, that I needed to see stuttering in a new way, in a not shameful way, in a just existential way. Like it is what it is. And while during that program, I still, I mean, I thought Eric was great, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't want to stutter. I mean, the wheels were starting to turn, but it did take months after that where I really started to think about things in a radically different way. But there's one story I wanted to tell about that experience in New York that I feel like is like a real, was along with, it's like everything was starting to kind of snowball. So it's like I met Eric and I was just feeling this positive feelings around stuttering was so foreign and so it felt so good to feel, to not feel this negativity surround something that I had my whole life. It was like unlocking something. And one of the exercises we did in the first week was these desensitization exercises where you would give surveys to random people in New York in the park. I think on this particular day we were in, almost positive it's Madison Square Park. At least that's how I remember it. And we had this stack of surveys, and we weren't like really collecting data, right? We were trying to get practice just stuttering in front of anyone. But it was kind of under the guise of I'm a researcher, we were, but it wasn't, some kind of scientific study or something like that. But so I'm so nervous, about this thing, because it's when I try to look inside like my deepest fears when it comes to stuttering, it is that feeling of I didn't want to be shamed or embarrassed, and this was just really confronting that. And they kind of suggested to us that that we shouldn't try to cherry pick the people we talk to. But at first I was kind of like, maybe trying to find a person with a dog, see, maybe they'll be a little nicer. I don't know why I thought that. I mean, people with dogs are awesome, but I was trying to find nice people, but then I started to get some confidence, and I was really, really working on my eye contact, because one of the things I would do when I would introduce myself, and one of the therapists there, Shamini, we were in a session one time, and she said, well, which one would you prefer, Joel, if I introduce myself like, hi, my name is Joel, which was pretty representative of how I was introducing myself at the time, or if it was, hi, my name is Joel. And she kind of did the same duration and struggle of stuttering, but the second time the only difference was she maintained eye contact with me, and that blew my mind, because I needed to see it again. I needed to see it, and I was like, I, as a listener, felt more comfortable when you were looking at me, even though you were stuttering, because I don't know, it just put me more at ease. So then after that day, I've been trying, and I still struggle with it, because it's hard to have that, feel that vulnerability when you're stuttering, especially if you're in a long block, and look in someone's eyes, staring into your soul. But for me, that was something I'm like, I can control this. I can look at someone when I stutter. So that was my big focus that day when we were doing surveys is, and when you're looking at someone and you're in like a 30 second or like 1 minute block, you're a warrior. You like hanging in there, and it's hard. But after a few times, I was starting to feel so good. I was like, gosh, this is a new way to communicate while still stuttering. That's different and feels good. But I got real kind of trying to figure out a different word than cocky, but I wanted a new challenge. And I saw this group of construction workers sitting there, and I was like, that looks challenging, because they're, just kind of seem like rougher, cool guys. And so I approached one of them. I don't know why I picked him, but he was this older guy, and I started my spiel about, hi, my name's Joel. I'm a person who stutters, and I'm out here working on my speech and doing some surveys on stuttering. And I got in a pretty long block, but making perfect eye contact with this man. And he interrupts me in the middle of my block and starts mimicking my stutter in front of all these guys. And they're all like, I can't remember if they laughed or not, but it was literally the thing that I was the most scared about in that situation, was that these, like, I mean, it's not like they were authority figures or anything like that, but they were these older men that were ridiculing me openly. And you know how sometimes though, it was the perfect kind of stars aligning, where you'll get emotional or like fired up, and all of a sudden you'll just kind of be fluent for a second. And I just it's another thing. When I was little, when I would get really mad, I sometimes wouldn't stutter, and then my parents would be like, why aren't you stuttering? And that would make me more mad, and then anyway, so I said, are you making fun of me? Are you making fun of my stuttering? Like, never left eye contact with this guy. And he just kind of like looked down, and he didn't, because all of a sudden I kind of like came alive and was animated and was like intense. And I don't think he was expecting that, because honestly, and I think back, and I think it's in that situation, for that intense situation where I had, for my whole life, I was used to feeling shame. And I think for the first time in my life, I felt pride about my stuttering, like true, genuine pride that, you know what, I have this challenge, and I'm out here doing a really hard thing, working on it. And you're like, if that's funny to you, and I don't have any respect for that. So, and I think some of it comes with age too. Like, if I was 17, I don't know, don't think I could have had that kind of a moment, but it was just a new awakening for me. And there's been a lot of ups and downs since that day. But it has always felt like a pivotal moment in my journey. And let's see here. And it's just one of those things that has just made me who I am. And I think that's why now, and I look back, and one other thing I remember, and it's going back to the theme about not being able to comprehend the actual reality that I'm in right now. But I remember around this time, I was, because I was also thinking that I wanted to be a speech-language pathologist at the time. And I was emailing lots of people who stutter, and really trying to connect with people. And one of these guys that I was talking to, and I can't remember his name, but it just sticks out to me so much, is that he'd been stuttering his whole life, and he's like, but I have to be honest with you, now I don't really, if I have to give a speech, stuttering is probably the 100th worry on my list. And I just could not believe that. Like, how could stuttering not be this thing that you're just so overwhelmed with? And I just didn't believe really that could ever happen for me. And somehow that's exactly what's happened to me. Like, even today, I told Kelly, my wife, I was like, I'm super nervous for this. And she's like, wow, I've never really seen you like this. And she's like, are you worried about stuttering? I'm like, no, I want to use this time, and it's a big honor. And I just want to make sure it comes out right. And, but yeah, I have to say that and I don't think actually I don't think I'm quite stuttering as much as I normally do. Um, Again, I don't know. It's the disorder is variable, as they say, but it is. There's days that go by, which I know I stutter a lot, but I just don't even think about it, right? And then there'll be maybe even a week that will go by where, and there's plenty of other stuff I worry about, but at some point it turned into a thing that I don't spend that much time thinking about. And it does make me wonder, it does kind of make me wonder who I really am, because stuttering, I feel like, for such a big part of my life, just defined me in a lot of ways. And it took me a while to decouple those two things, stuttering and who I am. And I think that, I mentioned, and Karen mentioned, that I got a degree in speech-language pathology because I thought I wanted to be a speech therapist. But once I was actually in front of other people all day doing therapy, I started to get an awareness and appreciation for how much of an introvert I am, and how exhausting that is for me. And I never really knew that. I just thought it was always related to stuttering. But, and I love people, and I love hanging out with people, but I also just really love to be by myself all day, and lock myself in a room and just work on a guitar pedal and work on a design. That's truly my bliss and what I love to do. And it wasn't until I was able to kind of tease apart my stuttering experience and look at myself as a person, in the analogy that they used at the time at the American Institute for Stuttering, that Catherine Montgomery used, was that you wanted to change your stuttering from the hub of the wheel to a spoke, which, for a while, it's like I wanted the whole wheel to be stuttering, because I was just so into the community and learning about it and everything. But then after that kind of faded a little bit, I realized that what I really love to do is design guitar pedals. And that's what I want to do. And that's what I need to do, because that's what I love. And, yeah, it's definitely a pretty wild experience for me to be talking to everybody right now in this kind of a context, because I just feel like this work that Friends is doing is just so critically important, because even just planting these seeds for kids, that stuttering is okay, and that there are not, stuttering isn't black and white. There's not one approach to managing it that's one size fits all. And sometimes I feel like for myself, there's an argument where I there's just no management, because it's you know, it's about communication, and I'm you know, as long as I can be an effective communicator, and be true to myself and get my point across in a clear way, stuttering is just, it's just not, it just doesn't, it just can't be that barrier for me. And it is something that I'm so ambivalent about, because I love that I stutter so much, but for 20 years of my life, it was the exact opposite. I've been looking at myself this whole time. So now I'm going to look at other people. Good. Everybody's smiling. That's great. I guess I have 1 minute left. So I wasn't sure if I was going to take any questions or not, but I think that we're going to do a Zoom later for follow-up questions for the keynote, because I'd love to get some questions from you guys. But honestly, I just got kind of selfish here and was just really wanting to kind of talk about my experiences and my journey. And again, I'm just so thankful to Friends to have this opportunity, honor of my life. So appreciative that this organization exists, and thanks so much everybody for listening. And I just read one comment, but it's making my day. So it's from Amy Johnson, says, "Your openness and honesty really spoke to me. It was as if you were in my head." That means at least for one person, I accomplished what I was hoping to. So thank you so much, Amy.
Joel, that was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
I hope you get a few minutes to read all the comments.
Okay.
Yeah, they're beautiful. This was just what we all needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joel. That was, I could listen to you speak all day.